Did you know that 30 years ago in 1996, there was a movie called From Dusk Till Dawn starring George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino that shares a lot of similarities to Sinners? Or should I say, Sinners shares a lot of similarities with From Dusk Till Dawn. If you haven't seen the movie, I strongly suggest that you do before you watch this video, because we are about to break down every similarity and find out which film did it better. Let the battle commence. Now, both of these movies are shockingly similar. Both are centered around two notorious crime brothers. Both start out as crime movies for half their runtime. The brothers' main goal is to hang at a horny club when suddenly the vampires show up. One of the brothers gets bitten and turns into a vampire, and then the rest of the movie is a battle for survival against an army of the undead. Both films also have different tones going on in their story. The first half of From Dusk Till Dawn is very much a psychological thriller, and the first half of Sinners is a western. And both movies execute these additional tones very well. Sinners is very calm and almost angelic with its period piece setting and Wild West style guitar music which plays throughout most of the film's soundtrack. And From Dusk Till Dawn is incredibly disturbing, and that is mainly down to our main characters, Seth and Richie Gecko.
You think it was funny?
Of the two, George Clooney's character at least feels like he has a code. His brother, on the other hand, played by Quentin Tarantino, is downright psychotic, and he almost single-handedly makes the first half of this film so uncomfortable and even disturbing to sit through, both because of his violent actions and just the fact that he's Quentin Tarantino. And then, of course, we get the vampire parts of the film. Now, in From Dusk Till Dawn, when the vampire stuff happens, it is a complete bait and switch, and the tone very sharply turns. In Sinners, however, there's a gradual transition throughout the movie, and it tells you right from the start that vampires exist in this world. That being said, the abrupt change in tone for Dusk Till Dawn is by design, and this is where the movie is very divisive with audiences, because if you were really invested with the crime half of the film, it comes to a complete stop when the vampires show up, and you're essentially trading one film for another. And that's also kind of the case with Sinners, except the vampires were baked into the story, so the tonal and narrative shift isn't as jarring as it was in From Dusk Till Dawn. So, which movie handled its story better? Well, both movies are very bold with what they're attempting to do, and I'd argue that Sinners in particular tries to do a lot more with its tone, because as well as being a crime film, a western, and a horror movie, it's also part musical. So Sinners definitely takes the cake for the sheer amount of genres it's juggling. That being said, as it went on, I thought Sinners had some really slow parts, and it just didn't compare to the smoother pacing of From Dusk Till Dawn. I really think the movie needed to be shorter, and I think cutting out a couple of the songs would have helped. A couple songs were fine, and they surprisingly didn't throw the tone off, but some songs could have been cut or reduced in length. And whereas From Dusk Till Dawn has a runtime of 1 hour and 48 minutes, Sinners is 30 minutes longer at 2 hours and 17 minutes. So the pacing is not on Sinners' side, and From Dusk Till Dawn massively gets the edge here. Having said that, I think I prefer the story for Sinners. The reason being is because when I watched From Dusk Till Dawn when I was younger, I loved the vampire stuff, and I thought it was a very pleasant surprise. But now that I've gotten older, I actually preferred the crime thriller part of the film, and I really wanted to see it play out and see where the story was gonna go. So when the tonal shift happened, I actually was disappointed this time round, because the A-level crime film was just so good, and then we get thrown into this infinitely less intelligent B movie. And so with Sinners, I prefer how it had a more gradual tonal shift and transition into its vampire segment, and that made you feel more comfortable and willing to let go of its original storyline. So it's interesting what time will do to your opinion on a movie, but I felt that Sinners actually committed to its other tones before the vampires came in, and naturally weaved them into its main plot, whereas From Dusk Till Dawn just completely abandoned it. So although I like the story and tone for both movies, in the end, the movie with superior story is Sinners. Now, Michael B. Jordan plays a double role as twin brothers Smoke and Stack, and he was really good. The way he seamlessly interacts with his other self was so convincing and well done. Warner Brothers have done this trick 3 times now, and they really know how to make this effect work. And I like how they separate the two brothers with red and blue colored accents to their clothing. And the opening scene where someone asks, "You two twins?" and they stare at him for a while, and one of them says,
"Nah, we cousins."
That was really funny and made me laugh. And it sounds weird to say, but Michael B. Jordan had great chemistry with himself in this film. The rest of the characters are alright too, but they aren't anything great. The movie is really resting on Michael B. Jordan. Even Haley Steinfeld's character wasn't all that interesting. She plays his ex, and he constantly tries to send her packing, but then we suddenly see the two dancing, and I was like, did we miss a scene? I found that to be a little odd. Now, once she started to get a little bit more interesting, she turned into a vampire. So that's probably the only bait and switch From Dusk Till Dawn moment that this movie had. Now, the two brothers in From Dusk Till Dawn are very bad people, but the movie gives them depth by showing their relationship as siblings, and you see how it is a loving but simultaneously disruptive relationship. And that adds layers to them and doesn't just make them two-dimensional evil gangsters. Although I do love when Seth sets ground rules with their hostage.
If you make a noise, Mr. 44 makes a noise. If you ask a question, Mr. 44 answers it. Try and fucking run on us. Because I got 6 little friends, and they can all run faster than you can.
That is such great writing. This whole scene had great writing, and contrary to what you might think, Seth has a code, whereas Richie here is just bloodthirsty and looks for any excuse to kill people, even making up or imagining interactions just so he can kill them. That hostage I showed you, Seth promised to keep her alive.
You hang in there, you follow the rules, and you don't fuck with us, and you'll get out of this alive. I give you my word.
See, like I said, he's a very bad dude, but he seems to have a code. So he leaves for a while to handle some other business, and then he comes back a few hours later with some food for himself, his brother, and the hostage, and well...
Richard, where is she?
She's in there.
What the fuck is she doing in there?
Richie brutally murdered her, even though Seth promised he'd keep her alive.
Richard, what's wrong with you?
And that gets him really mad. And through this genuine outburst, you find out more about Seth's character and how he doesn't want to kill anyone, but his brother does. This is some seriously disturbing and effed up shit. And it puts you all the more on edge when they take a family hostage later. And the family themselves, you really care for them. The father, Jacob, is a pastor who lost his faith when his wife died, and Seth is hostile towards them at first, but as he gets to know them, he slowly becomes protective over them, especially when his sick and demented brother attempts to get closer to them.
Richie? What?
Told you to watch those kids, not to talk to them.
At one point, he even knocks his brother out. That's how sick and unstable Richie is. And later on, once they cross the border into Mexico, Seth gets into an altercation with someone at the bar, and things could have gotten ugly, but Jacob breaks everything up and actually finds a peaceful solution that fixes everything. In spite of that though, Seth still wants to beat that guy to death. But then he gets very brutally lectured and told off by Jacob.
Are you such a fucking loser? You can't tell when you've won.
What'd you call me?
And rather than get angry at him or kill him then and there, he actually respects him and politely insists that they share a drink together.
To your family.
To yours.
This is really strong writing. Seriously, the characterization in From Dusk Till Dawn is so strong that it is one of the reasons it lost the story round. Because I really wish these relationships could have continued without the vampires taking over the story. Speaking of which, now it's time to talk about the fun part. How did both movies handle the vampires? Well, whilst From Dusk Till Dawn shifted to horror during these parts, it was incredibly self-aware and even comedic. And to its credit, the comedic elements didn't compromise the feeling of danger and stakes. And the action sequences were an absolute blast. The makeup and practical effects were really cool, the vampires looked like super vampires, the action scenes were really creative, we get the most badass cross ever in a vampire movie. They start out with basic objects, but then they make themselves some sick weapons, and no matter how comedic it got, the tension was always there, and you genuinely care for all these characters, especially the ones you have been spending the whole movie with. And this further develops Seth's character, because when he finds that Jacob has been bit, you can see how guilt-ridden and angry he is that he has brought this hell onto this innocent family. And I love how the pastor tells his kids that he is going to turn into a vampire soon, but I'm gonna help you survive whilst I'm alive. And if you don't promise to kill me when I turn, I'm gonna shoot myself right now.
3, 4,
Okay, all right, I promise I'll do it.
2.
Okay. I'll kill you when you change. I swear to God, in Jesus Christ's name.
Thank you, sir.
And you do feel really bad when these characters die or turn into vampires and have to kill each other. Except for Feetsucker over here. He was the first of the main crew to go, and I don't think anyone who saw this movie felt sorry for him. In Sinner's case, when the vampires show up, the movie plays it incredibly straight. There is some humor thrown in, but it's mostly played as a survival horror film. The vampires are your more traditional kinds, and when the vampire stuff all started, I really enjoyed it. It kicks off with one shocking scene that you know is coming, and you are just dreading it the whole time. And then you start getting a little paranoid and don't know who is a vampire and who isn't. And this little section felt like it was inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing, and I would have liked for them to spend a bit more time with this as it was over very quickly, but it was still fun to see. And unlike From Dusk Till Dawn, we actually have a head vampire here, and he was very threatening. And I've already mentioned that Ryan Coogler took inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing, but you won't believe the movie he took inspiration from for his head vampire. Here's a hint. It's animated, and I did a versus video of it just recently. Who would have thought that Puss in Boots 2 would inspire an R-rated horror film?
That's kidding!
Don't tell. That just speaks volumes of how amazing that film was with its villain. He even had the best song in the movie. Yeah, the vampire leader sings, and as ridiculous as this sounds, I'm telling you, it did not throw off the tone of the movie. What did throw the tone off is that there were some very dumb character moments.
You've been in and out of here all day. Ain't never need an invite then.
Can I at least get my money?
Careful.
I mean, why didn't he just throw it on the floor? For all the good writing in this movie, this scene was incredibly stupid and was not consistent with how smart this character usually is. And this is not the only stupid decisions the characters make. The biggest thing I didn't understand is why they didn't invite 1 or 2 vampires to come in at once, rather than just letting all of them in. And that goes about as well as you think it does. And this is where the inferior characters come into play, because I didn't really feel anything for them when they started to get picked off. I felt for the twins, but that was about it. Now, does that mean I hated these characters? No, I liked these characters, but when things started going down, I was not on the level of caring for them, and that was a big disconnect for me. But in From Dusk Till Dawn, I did care for the characters. But where Sinners really lost its luster is when the big final battle happens. It was very quick, very underwhelming, the camera wasn't able to keep up with what was going on, and I found it to be very anticlimactic. And the way everything got dealt with felt very convenient to me. I don't even know how Michael B. Jordan's character was able to land that finishing kill on the leader, because there was an army of vampires between him and the head vampire, but somehow he gets past all of them and delivers the finishing stake. So overall, I thought the vampire segment was a lot more fun and better handled in From Dusk Till Dawn. It had far more creative action sequences and set pieces, and because I cared for the characters, it made the vampire scenes all the more engrossing and nerve-wracking. And of all the good things to remember in Sinners, the action wasn't really one of them. Now, I don't want it to seem like I'm bashing Sinners. I'm not. Sinners does a great job in its own right, especially the tension. I was just underwhelmed by the climax, but when the vampires first show up and try to deviously get in, that was the most fun I had in this movie. But unfortunately, the climax didn't do it for me. And of the two, I thought Quentin Tarantino actually wrote better characters than Ryan Coogler did. And yes, Quentin Tarantino wrote this movie. He also wanted to cast George Clooney because he quite hilariously thought that they both looked like real-life brothers.
I remember we were doing an MTV interview, and they were like, you know, why did you think about George? And Quentin was like, well, you know, man, it was like, I was watching ER, man, and I look over and I'm thinking, you know, fuck, man, that guy and I could be like brothers, you know. And I'm sitting there like going, what?
George was like on the cover of Us magazine or something. And Robert's like, hey, we should cast this guy. He looks like Quentin.
Did you decide together this was the hair you were gonna have?
I was doing the episode of ER. You got your hair cut for that episode.
Right.
Which was this cut, basically.
Right.
All right, and I just had it in my mind.
So the movie with superior vampires and characters is From Dusk Till Dawn. So in conclusion, we got 2 great vampire movies here, Both are very different, but they also have connective tissue with regards to their concept. Although From Dusk Till Dawn stops at vampires, whereas Sinners has tons of other themes and messages too, such as religion, racism, and many other things. And usually this could feel very preachy and like Hollywood are trying to force an agenda, but Ryan Coogler is a much more talented and skilled writer than most of those people in Hollywood. So you could see the message if you wanted to, or you could completely ignore it and just enjoy a good vampire flick. Either way, he managed to make it all naturally come together in the end and fit the story. From Dusk Till Dawn is definitely a less smart film. The first half is where all its smarts lie, and then it decided to trail off and be a fun B-movie. And if it committed more to that first half, I would have been so happy. But as is, I still really enjoyed myself. It's time for the scores. Sinners gets a 7 out of 10, and From Dusk Till Dawn gets a low 8. I don't think Sinners is as good as people have said, mainly because of the characters and the action with the vampires. But it got a lot of things right, and I did have fun watching it, and I really liked the western part of the film. And at first I was like, alright, I've seen it once, I don't need to see it again. But upon reflection, I think once some time has passed, I might actually consider seeing it again. And Ryan Coogler, he really impressed me with his directing here and how he is able to blend all these tones together. He deserves serious props for that. But I've said this about Black Panther, I've said it about Wakanda Forever, and I'm saying it now. I don't think directing action is where he shines. And for all the compliments you can give his directing, that sadly is not one of them. And that is a very integral and important part of a film like this. Regardless, these are two fun vampire movies. And if you haven't already, I recommend that you see them both. A big thanks to my patrons. I upload content on my Patreon and YouTube memberships regularly, so feel free to check it out. And if you like what I do on this channel, consider supporting me over on Patreon. Even a $1 donation will help keep the lights on and you will get a ton of additional content in return. With that said, what are your guys' thoughts on Sinners and From Dusk Till Dawn? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And be sure to give this video a thumbs up and click that subscribe button and the bell right next to it so you can stay up to date with all my future Versus videos. Thank you very much for watching everyone, and I will catch all of you next time. Take care.